Well, g'day to you, Sam. What do you got to say to us? Because somebody's missing tonight. Who is
I
it?
know. I was going to do the good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone who's joining us from around the world. Welcome to Croatian
Well, you do
Conversations.
that because he's missing.
I know. Joe's missing. We're missing our introduction man himself. But there's a good reason. He's currently traveling up to Yorkshire for some ministry. So we're definitely praying for him. So please keep him keep him in your prayers for safe travels. But we're back for season 3 of Croatian Conversations this year. Had a little bit of a slightly extended break. John, do you want to elaborate slightly as to why we had a little bit of a break?
All right. Now, I'm looking at my laptop, and down in the bottom left-hand corner, it's got a weather announcement called Very Humid. I open the door and the rain is pouring down. Now, we have had an incredibly blessed wet season, so the farmers are really mad at the Weather Bureau for predicting a long, extended hot season drought. They've sold off their crops, and it seems like the weather is not doing what the climate change people want it to do. But one result has been here. We were offline as of the storm just before Christmas. So we were offline until 1 week ago. We had no internet. We had no landlines, and our cell tower went down. Do you know what it's like to live in a world where you can be at home and you can't even use your cell phone? I tell you what, I had to go down to the shopping centre to even send a text message, and there's nothing worse than trying to run a ministry internationally just on your cell phone down at the nearest shopping centre. It's almost impossible, but it's on again now, and we're all back, minus Joe, of course. And as Sam said, you make sure you pray for him because it's wet and cold and icy. And Sam, somebody else is missing who's normally on our screen. Who is that?
Yeah, that's Dr. Glenn Wilson, the Dirt Doc, as some know him. He's having storms currently over in good old USA land. So he's having power cuts and things like that. We've yet to hear from him. He was here earlier. He may appear at some point. We don't know. But again, keep him in your prayers. Let's hope he can join us at some point. But we'll carry on without him. What we're going to do is we're just going to kick it off with a brief ministry sort of run round because we've been out of it for a few weeks, so we thought we might as well. So who is up first, John?
I reckon you better have me up first because I've got some good news and some bad news. The bad news is, remember my famous boomerang? I mean, I've been using this for decades almost, right? I got it from an Aboriginal tourist shop, but you see, last week we brought home a brand new puppy. Look at my poor boomerang. My boomerang, I can throw it all I like, but it's not going to come back. I now have a de-informationed boomerang. But then that's where we're going to go tonight, on design in eyes and how you'd recognize it and the importance of information. This one here has been puppy dog chewed. And I'll tell you what, it won't come back because the information needed to make this bit of wood do what wood won't is actually in the puppy dog's mouth. Some of the material's gone. Now, that's the sad news. The good news is some of you know my wife has been suffering from dementia, and we are really encouraged with some of the progress we've made in the last couple of weeks. Hopefully we'll be able to keep you updated. But for those of you who've been praying, thank you. And just remember us as we deal with the latest treatments and all sorts of things like that. But we're encouraged with at least a small margin of improvement in the past couple of weeks. And of course, what's interesting is we've got Jurassic Ark and it's running. Many people have had to cancel their trips because of the rain, despite the Weather Bureau's forecasts of long, hot and dry. But we've got some fantastic experiments now cooking. One suggested by one of our English board members, why don't we try to see what happens when you turn sugarcane, mulch, waste into fossils? And do you know what's happened? Well, keep watching this year and you'll see it's really, really exciting. Diane, what have you got to share with us? What have you been doing?
Well, we have been having a break from sending out newsletters, partly because it is Christmas and New Year period, and partly because the Brisbane office was cut off from the outside world, or at least electronically anyway. But we will get back to you soon. We do keep We do keep a watching brief on the science news report, so there'll be all sorts of interesting things coming up in our newsletter soon. But thank you all, those who were praying for us, for our safety and for our health. I've had a couple of health issues as well, which are ongoing. But anyway, we are back and looking forward to a really exciting year. We've got lots of wonderful things to share with you in the upcoming broadcasts and in our newsletters.
And Craig, you've had some excitement at your museum because unlike our end of the world, your weather's been pretty good down there, isn't it?
Yeah, we've had fantastic weather down here for Tasmania's for a Tasmanian summer. Yeah, very little rain actually, and the farmers are really wanting that. But we've had hundreds of visitors come through our museum in the last few weeks, and that's been great. It's been a great opportunity to witness to some, and some have been really challenged with what they've seen there. We've got our new T-Rex head. John has made it safely down, so that'll be installed on the wall. We stole it from John's museum. Well, it was only on loan there, wasn't it really, John? But we finally got it down here, and that was great. I'm currently planning a ministry road trip around Australia in the middle of this year for nearly a couple of months up through the centre parts of New South Wales and Queensland, a bit of Victoria, and then back down the coastal way. And we're busily building portable fossil displays and other displays to take with us. And Derek, one of our chief volunteers down here, is going to come with me, we hope. And yeah, up in Queensland in the next week for a wedding, a family wedding, and hope to get up to Jurassic Ark in that time. So that'll be good to catch up with some of the team up that way.
That's great. Now, listen, Sam, I see that Glenn has joined us again, and we'll bring you back in a moment, Glenn, because you're really the key to starting our program today. I don't know if you've got your PowerPoints up yet, have you?
Yes.
Oh, great stuff.
Great
stuff. Sam, you've got an announcement before I sort of introduce the subject. Remind us what it is you want people to hang around and watch at the end. Something really interesting is going to happen there. What are you doing?
Well, I mean, this is sort of my little ministry update before we crack on with the show. So you definitely do want to stick around to the end because we have two. Oh, well, I have two videos for you. One is a sort of vlog style behind the scenes look at some of the work we do at Creation Research when I went over to the museum back end of last year. So I did like a little vlog style thing, and you get to see sort of some of the things we do. But then also as well, you really don't want to miss what comes afterwards because we are announcing our next big project. You really don't want to miss that. And so without further ado, if I may sort of play on the phrasing of tonight's topic, I call this meeting of Creation Conversations to order. For those who don't know, that's what the head of the House of Commons says when he wants people to be quiet. But anyway, carry on.
Okay, so Sam's going to have something special at the end. As many of you know, with my wife having dementia, even though we've seen minor improvements, really encouraging, I may disappear and Craig may have to disappear as well. So we're looking forward to the other folks who are remaining to deal with the last bit. But what's tonight about? Sam, you've got a very relevant Bible verse to read to us, a couple of verses to kick the night off, and then hand back to me and I'll introduce the subject.
All right, lovely, jubbly. Well, this is coming to you from Matthew 6, verses 22 and 23. The lamp of the body is the eye. If therefore your eye is good, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? And that's over to you, John.
Good. Now, you may notice we have some degenerate people on the show tonight, the three who are wearing glasses. Now, I'm the oldest person on the screen, but you may notice that I have no trouble with looking at screens and things like that at the moment, maybe reading a bit at night when I've got the light on, but we're dealing with the eye. and the design in the eye. And Glenn's going to kick it off in a moment. But you see, here's the context. We've been talking about the evidence of design and the evidence of creation, and two things usually come up. People like Darwin, who have very famous statements, and people like Dawkins, who oppose me to the hilt. In fact, he wrote a book about the stupidity of creation, including a whole section on how the eyeball is the design of an idiot just because he's wearing glasses. And he thinks that proves evolution is true. After all, if God designed the eyeball, it should work better. Well, we're going to be dealing with all those subjects tonight. But Glenn, I believe you've just visited your eye specialist because of degenerative trends in the present world. The world seems to be running downhill, but then that's the theme of the Bible. In the beginning, God made the eyeball, God made the ear, God made the body, God made the animals, and he made them very good. And no longer are we very good. Glenn, come on board now, because you've been missing a little bit. Tell us a bit about what your ministry update might be, if you've got one, and then take away the first section and then hand back to me when you're done on your bit on the eyeball.
Okay. But just on ministry update, I've been very busy getting ready for Joe's visit. Joe will be coming here in about 2 to 3 weeks, and it's going to spend about 2 months with us. And so we've been organizing that with him. That's the main thing that's been going on. The other is something that I'm going to talk about tonight. You know, I'm 67 and my eyes have slowly gone down the last, 15, 20 years. I've been wearing readers, but in the last year, my eyes have really gotten bad, much worse. In the last year, particularly at seeing at distance. So in the last year, I went to the eye doctor, and that was my first time. He kind of got on to me about, you ought to go more than once every 66 years. And shortly after that, we had something take place that I'm going to share about tonight, something at our church. But first, let me see if I can share this with everybody.
I have it ready to go on my end if you want to save some time.
Oh, well, it doesn't matter. I've got it here.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Well, it should be here. Let's see. Yes. So you can see this on the screen, I assume.
I will do in a second, and now they can.
All right. So this was one of the quotes that John was talking about. A couple of quotes from Darwin talking about the eye. He said, to suppose that the eye, with all its inimitable, means, defying imitation, contrivances for adjusting the focus to different distances, which is what I'm having trouble with, for admitting different amount of lights, and for the correction of spherical and chromatic aberration, could have been formed by natural selection, seems, I freely confess, absurd in the highest degree. And it is absurd to think that this could have just happened by chance. The eye is so intricate with so many different parts that have to work together. And the problem that I am having is this lens back here. I don't know if you can see the lens just behind the pupil is hardening. And as it hardens, I don't have cataracts yet. It's not to that point, but it's not adjusting to the different distances. So the first doctor wasn't a lot of help, other than told me, well, you need better reader glasses, but couldn't correct my distance. Well, that was fine till right before Christmas. We had at our church, we had a movie night, and it was a movie in which the character of the movie was going to be attending with it. And this was a Dr. Ming Wong, and it was about sight. And so I wanted to just share with you just briefly his testimony and a little bit about him. He grew up in China, and during the Cultural Revolution, he was in the 9th grade when they were no longer allowed to go to school, go to have books. They took their books away from them. And his parents were both medical doctors, and that's what he always wanted to be. Well, after the revolution was over and they were allowed to go back to school, he had missed all of high school. But they were given a test to see who would qualify to go on to college, even though he didn't have high school, and his parents gave him 2 months of teaching of all high school in the 2 months, and he qualified, one of only 4 out of over 1 million in his province that were selected to go to college. So he got to go to college, and he went to America. He got his doctorate in laser physics at MIT, then went to Harvard and got a medical degree. So he is trained in both lasers, physics, and in eyes. Well, it happened that he was talking to one of his professors at Harvard, and he had driven up in a car, and he didn't, of course, believe in God at all. He had no knowledge of God, but the professor asked him, he says, "You see that car you just drove up in?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "Do you think all of those parts, like I'm showing here, could have just come together by natural processes and formed that car?" And he said, "No, that would be absurd." He said, "Well, what about the eye? Could all the chemicals have just come together, form the DNA to form all the delicacies of the eye that you've been studying?" And he said a light went on. He just realized there must be a God. This couldn't happen by chance. That's impossible. He's right. And he became a believer. And in fact, in one of the movies in America that is called God Is Not Dead, they have a Chinese character that's playing his part in his testimony of that salvation experience. So this movie was about his life and then his starting an eye practice. Well, this week I went and saw him, my wife and I both, and basically they looked at my eyes and said, yes, the lens is not to the point of being cataract, but what we can do is we go in, we laser cut into it and then remove that lens, and we'll install a contacts lens. And what that will do will give me very good vision. With distance, it will slightly improve your reading, but the nice thing is that your reading will never change because that lens will always be in there. They haven't made yet a pliable lens that could be inserted that would adjust like our God designed lens. They haven't yet perfected, they're not as good as God yet, to where it would move, and then I get a choice. I can have good vision at distance, or they can put a lens in that I can have good distance at reading. But to do both, you have to give some things up, like peripheral vision, depth perception, that type of thing. So that's what I'm looking at doing. But it just reminded me of how brilliant God is in his design, and how the eye, despite what Darwin says, can be used to take someone that brilliant and that intelligent and make him realize, oh, that can't happen by chance. So that's what I had to share with the group. I'm stopping sharing, Sam. You can go back to just me.
Okay, so thank you, Glenn. That's great. The whole point of tonight is sort of related to something that Sam said. You had a throwaway line about the Houses of Parliament or one of your government bodies. What was that funny statement you made, Sam?
Order. It's order. Order is what they
right. Okay, with that funny British accent. But when they take a vote, they say something very interesting. The ayes have it, right? Meaning the yes vote won. Now, eyes is an old-fashioned word, but it's not related to the eyes that Dr. Glenn was just talking about. EYES, the eyeballs in your head. Sam read one Bible verse about the eyes. I'm going to read another one out of Proverbs chapter 20 and verse 12, and it says, the hearing ear and the seeing eye, the Lord has made both of them. Now, this is where the contention is. People like Darwin, people like Dawkins are denying that not only is Proverbs false, but the cross-reference back to Genesis, where God made the man, and God made the man to be like him, and God is all-seeing. So don't be surprised that Adam, made in his image, can see things as well, just not as good as God can. And in this fallen world, we can't see anywhere near as even Adam would have. But what we're going to be dealing with is the ayes have it. Play on the political statements, both in America, Australia, England, when the yes vote wins. The yes is a definite to creation, and you're going to see why. The yes is a definite to the proof that God has built into our eyeballs the evidence that he is smarter than we are. I mean, great stuff, Glenn. I'm sure it's going to cost you a heap of money to get a plastic lens in there that won't stretch or change. We're not as clever as God is, but we're more clever than the worms and things like that. And that's going to show up too, the creativity of man as we talk around today. Now, if we can actually just bring the whole screen to me, I want to introduce Diane next. Okay. There we are. I'll get rid of this other screen here, because before we go any further, we have to deal with the fact that when Dawkins and co. said the eyeball is the evidence of an idiot who created it, or else it happened by chance, and he picks evolution as a chance type process that he says created the eyeball. So does Darwin ultimately. So does every textbook. So how would we tell the difference? We certainly know what happens when my dog, random chance, finds my boomerang poking out of my computer box and chews it up. No more information left in there. So let me have a look at this subject tonight. I have here a pen, right? A big, thick felt pen. And I did something for you to sort of try and help you understand. I drew this. Now, do you like that? Now, for most of you, you can probably use your imagination and see the letter M. I just drew it this way. I drew it that way, that way, that way. It's roughly like the letter M. But then when I put it that way, it's like the letter E. When I put it that way, it's like the letter W. When I put it that way, it's like the number 3. Now, did you notice something about that? One of our professor friends from the University of Washington State makes a good point, that design is always evidence of mind. Your mind in this one here, you know a letter M that goes and it looks something like that. So when I draw that, you think M. But then you know a letter E that definitely looks like that. So when I show you that, you think of E or E. When I show you that, you think of the English W. But when I ask you to put them together, MEW, and I've done this plenty of times in classrooms and universities, what animal comes to mind when you see MEW? And almost with no exception, they say cat. Cat? MEW doesn't spell cat. MEW is probably not even how a cat says meow. But that's the one that pops into their mind 99% of the time. And of course, if you like numbers, there are 3 cats. Well, 3 letters in mew. Now, all the information is not on that bit of paper. It's actually in your head. But I actually did that there because I took the information in my head and I found a pen. By the way, there are no E's in this pen. There are no M's. There are no 3's. And yet I love to play with students and say, how many letters do you think are stored in this pen? And they know the answer is none. The letters start up there. I invent the letters in order to convey information. And the Bible says that God has showed his handiwork. He deliberately is wanting to communicate to you that he is a great and mighty creator. In fact, I'm going to go one step further. You see, we have in the creation groups all around the planet many attempts to try and define creation. And in the USA, it became fairly popular for quite a long time to describe a creation as something that is irreducibly complex. Now, I hate to tell you this, that whilst that's true so many times, there are many times where it doesn't apply. I mean, here's a bit of stick. It's from a pine tree. It's a square stick. You see, it's the stem of a matchstick. Now, the tree, you've got your head, which you think evolved by chance. Your brain got there by accident. Your eyeballs happened by random chance processes. And the tree is a result of millions of years of accidental interactions. And you know very well that you Americans particularly took our gum trees to the USA, to California, deliberately to make matchsticks. Why? because our gum tree wood makes very good burnable things. Trouble is, it's produced all the bushfires in California, or makes them worse. Now, a matchstick, well, it didn't happen by itself. Oh, yes, you can look at the pine tree, but to shape it up into the 4 square, you can look at the gum tree to shape it up and then dip it in a bit of flammable stuff. This case, it used to be the original phosphorus stuff. Now it's a bit safer, but it still burns. I mean, have a look. You see, whoops, it's a wet day. Maybe it won't do it. There we are. Now, that match is not a living thing. Irreducibly complex doesn't work. You see, what we are looking at is a substance, the gum tree, the pine tree, and the phosphoroid type of stuff, that if you have them by themselves, they will never make matches. So when you look for a useful definition of creation, go one step further than irreducible complexity. A creation is anything that can't happen by itself. Matches, no way in the world they're going to ever take a tree, make it into square sticks, big enough, just the right size for you to hold, dip it in a burnable substance, and then sell it to you in a lovely box of Australian, free commercial here, Redhead matches, most famous brand in Australia. It's not going to happen. Hence the point that Professor Ed Nealon makes, information is always evidence of a pre-existing mind. Now, I have here one of our Aussie coins. I love taking these to the USA when I go, because the kids say, can we have one? Can we have one? So I do lots of competitions and hand these out as prizes. Why do they love them? Because they know that green spot in the middle of this yellow spot never would happen by itself. Metal does not do coins. Question: can chemicals over millions of years do eyeballs? Because that's what Darwin believes. That's what Dawkins believes. That's what your professor of biology at most university believes. That's what the textbooks, that's what the Discovery Channel and Attenborough and Co. are really selling you as a lie. Because something as simple as this beautiful piece of gold metallic stuff with a bit of green metallic stuff in it, you know it would never happen by itself. Oh, that's one of our coins. $1 coin. Is it really worth $1? Well, sadly, they don't use real gold and real silver anymore in coins, because they figured out that it's the shape that conveys the value. They don't need real value. They invent the value as well. It leads to some consequences like inflation, but in reality, it's invented. The information is in the mind. And of course, that brings me up to the subject we're going to be dealing with a little later. I'm going to hand over to Diane soon, but I'm coming back to deal with the most famous example that we've ever come across of eyes that can't happen by themselves. But Diane, before we get there, you're on next now. Would you take it, and before we have our first Q&A time, would you actually tell us what you're on about? Because you're dealing with how stupid is the eyeball? How much do we need? Oh, look, you're wearing glasses too. You must be one of those degenerate people. But then we all are. Okay, Diane, take it away.
Yes, I've had degenerate eyes actually for quite a long time. But John's point is that it's information that makes the difference between something that's chance random processes or something that's been designed. And we can all recognize that. People do say, oh, you can't recognize design. That's all pure faith. No, we can recognize design. But Richard Dawkins insists that if the eye was designed, it must have been designed by a complete idiot. So let's have a look at what Dawkins says and see if we can challenge that, because we can. And if we can go to my slides.
Yeah, you're ready to go, Diane.
That's great. Thank you. Yes, the vertebrate eye is considered to be an evolutionary accident, according to Darwin. As Glenn pointed out there in his book, The Origin of Species, he does actually write, now, to suppose this could happen with all of the clever things that it does, like correcting chromatic aberrations and focusing, it seems absurd, but if you have enough time, it can happen one step at a time. And that's the whole point of millions of years of evolution. It can all happen one step at a time. Well, I think we can challenge that, because in fact, what we've got in the eye is not a series of evolutionary accidents. We actually have brilliant design. Now, Richard Dawkins denies that. And in his book called The Greatest Show on Earth, which is supposedly the evidence for evolution, most of it's actually a rant against creation, but we've written about this book in our fact file. But this is a quote from his rant about the eye, and he carries on about how stupidly it's designed. We should send it back if it was designed by a creator. It's not just bad design. It's the design of a complete idiot. Now, we need to pray for Richard Dawkins, because calling God a complete idiot is not a very clever thing to do, because one day Richard Dawkins will have to face up to the Creator, who is the Lord Jesus Christ, who is also our judge. And he will be confronted with those words. So he is in perilous need, and he's not getting any younger, just like the rest of us, and he does wear glasses as well. But anyway, let's have a look at a human eye, and we call eyeballs balls because that's what shape they are, but they have a little bubble on the front there, which is the clear area where the light comes in. So basically, we have light coming in, it gets focused by the cornea and the lens, couple of really clever pieces of optics, which any of our optical devices have yet to be able to compete with. And then that light is conveyed through the eyeball to that yellow layer at the back there, and that is the retina, which is a layer of what's called photoreceptors. In other words, light receptor devices, or light receiving cells, which convert the light into electrical signals. Now, this is where Dawkins takes issue with the design of the eye. If we were to look at that layer under a microscope, and which is what we've got in this illustration here, the photoreceptors aren't at the place where the light actually impinges on the layer of cells. There are several layers of cells in this whole layer. It's a series of layers, like a layer cake. And the photoreceptors, where that conversion takes place from light to electrical signals, are at the back. And that is Dawkins' problem with the eye. He said it's backwards. This must be the design of a complete idiot. And that did confuse people for a long time. Now, if you see something that looks odd, but it obviously works, because we can all see, and we know that animals can see as well, the scientific approach is not to write it off as something that went wrong by chance random accidents. The scientific approach is to say, all right, here's something that looks odd. We should do some more research and find out and see how it does work. So creation is actually a better worldview, or a better mindset, to start off scientific research. And in fact, human curiosity starts with a creation mindset. We see things and say, oh yes, I wonder how that works. And we go and find out. And that is what a number of scientists and engineers have done. Now, that looks, our photo there just looks like a great big random mass of cells. All right, there's some arrangement in it, but you can't see the individual ones. But if you do actually work out what's inside here and see how those cells are arranged, they are connected to one another. And so this is how it works. We have light coming in the top there. Now notice those long blue cells. Those cells actually collect the light and convey it through all those other layers to the photoreceptor cells, right, which are called rods and cones. We'll come to those in a minute. Now, those are called Mueller cells, and the Mg in the diagram there stands for Mueller glia, right? Glia is a term that just means glue, and you have lots of cells called glia throughout your brain and the central nervous system. and they are supportive cells, but they are essential to keeping the electrically active cells working. And what happens is that these Mueller cells convey the light a bit like fiber optic cables, and they also correct color aberrations when the light has to be refracted through that system of lenses at the front, so that when it arrives at the rods and cones, which are the photoreceptor cells, it is in the best arrangement it could possibly be for those photoreceptor cells to respond to that. Now, the group of scientists who did this research and worked out how this worked, they came up with the opposite conclusion to Richard Dawkins. Their conclusion was the retina is revealed as an optimal structure. In other words, the best structure designed. Now, notice this was in a secular scientific paper. They cannot avoid the word design. They might deny it, they might claim to be atheists, but when they see design, they cannot avoid that word. So an optimal structure designed for improving the sharpness of images. In other words, getting the best image you can on the back of the eye. So let's go back to our layers of eyes there and look at the photoreceptors themselves, a little bit about them. They are called rods and cones. Now, why do we have two different types of light sensitive cells? Well, the reason for that is so that we can see color. So when you look at something that's really bright and colorful with lots of different colors, you can see all of those different colors and know what they are. And so you need different types of photoreceptors in order to do that. And if we go back to our retina, two different types of light sensing cells. We have rods which detect the overall amount of light. We need to know that, but they don't distinguish different colors. Now, different colors are different wavelengths of light, and we have three different types of cones. Now, Sam, you know a bit about visual things and electronic visual things. It all seems to work on red, green, and blue. And in fact, I remember when we used to have cables that were called RGB cables because they were red, green, and they conveyed red, green, and blue. And that's all based on the original color sensors, which are in the back of your eyes. And you actually have three different types of cones which respond to red, green, and blue light. But if you look at all of the different colors we have, and all the colors in a rainbow, you've got more than just red, green, and blue. So the way that we see all of these different subtle colors depends on how much the individual cells, the rods and cones, are stimulated. In other words, how much the whatever wavelength of light impinges on them, how much it sort of turns them on. They're not turned on like just simple on-off switches. They're a bit like dimmer switches. They can be stimulated very strongly or very weakly. So if you see something that's yellow, it will stimulate the green cones and the red sensitive cones, not to their fullest extent. And the combination of that stimulation of red cones and green cones reacting to that, we perceive the color yellow. But how do we perceive that as yellow when we've just got red cones and green cones, or green sensitive cones and red sensitive cones? That's where you need your brain. So remember, we started our discussion about design with information. You process information in your brain. So you need your brain in order to see as much as your eyeballs. So how does that work? Well, let's go back to the retina. What the rods and cones do is act as transducers, right? That's an engineering term meaning that they convert one form of energy into another. So what happens here? They convert light into electrical signals. And those then have to be sent to the brain in order to be interpreted. Now, it's not done by Wi-Fi. It actually needs cables just in order to send that information to the brain, which acts like a great big computer to analyze the electrical signals into proper data which we understand. And that's where all of those other layers come in. They are there for a purpose. And here is where Richard Dawkins has another complaint about the eyes, and where the evolutionists have said, oh, well, this is all just an evolutionary accident. And I have actually heard lecturers at the university that I used to work in say that, because there is a difference between our eyes and some other animal eyes. So we need to know how that information is going to get to the brain. So it goes from the rods and cones through all of those other layers where cells are connected to one another. They act like the cabling and the network to get the information back to the computer. But the problem that Dawkins and the university lecturers, the evolutionary lecturers, had is that there is a difference between a vertebrate eye and an invertebrate eye, in that where those photoreceptors are located. Dawkins says vertebrate eyes, so that includes us, have them in the wrong place. We have photoreceptors at the back and nerve fibers, which act like the cables that are going to convey the information to the brain, at the front. We've seen how that has been fixed with the, and it wasn't a problem, it's been designed with the those Mueller-Glial cells, right? In an invertebrate eye, the photoreceptors are at the front and the nerve fibers are at the back. Now, in order to get those nerve fibers out of the eye, they have to be all gathered up and bundled into a cable, which is the optic nerve. So in a vertebrate eye, because the photoreceptors are at the back, the nerve fibers are at the front, they all get bundled up, but where they actually turn to leave the eye, you've got a patch where there aren't any photoreceptors, because the fibers have to go through the whole wall of the eye to get out the back of it. Now, that doesn't happen in an invertebrate eye because they're already at the back. And so that's why this zoology lecturer I once heard telling several times, telling the students that the vertebrate eye is just an accident of evolution. The vertebrates somehow got it wrong when they evolved from invertebrates. And the reason that Dawkins takes issue with this as a piece of bad design is that that region where you have the nerve fibers all turning in to form the optic nerve does not have any photoreceptors, and therefore it doesn't see any light. And it is traditionally called the blind spot because it doesn't see anything. Now, you can see this from the front of the eye. Glenn, when you went to the eye doctor, I'm sure he used an instrument to actually peer into the interior of your eye. And if you do that, this is what you see. Now, this is not an entire retina. This is just the back area of it. It's much bigger than this. And this pale area that you can see with blood vessels emerging out of it, that is the head of the optic nerve, and that is the blind spot. If you shine a beam of light directly onto that, there aren't any photoreceptors there, and it won't receive any light. Now, that's obviously not a problem. We don't go around with a great big dark blob in the middle of our vision all the time. Why does that happen? Well, for a start, this is not in the center of the eye. It's a little bit offset. We have two eyes, so that when you put the vision from both eyes together, they do overlap. And another interesting thing is, even when you are looking at something straight on and not moving, your eyes are actually moving, very, very tiny movements, but they're going on all the time. So your brain is getting information from the whole of this retina. It is constantly moving. So the blind spot is not always looking at exactly the same place. And the brain can fill in that gap a bit like a sort of ultra version of the clone tool. God invented Photoshop type editing software before any human software engineer did. So the blind spot is not a problem because we have two eyes, because of this constant movement, and because of the incredible image processing that's going on in your brain all the time. But let's consider how our two eyes work. We were given two eyes for a good reason. So when you're out in the world enjoying the beautiful scenery, how can we tell what things are on the right side and what things are on the left side from the light that's coming into our eyes? Okay, so we have two eyes, and looking ahead there, our left eye and our right eye. Now, think about how the light is coming into our eyes. Our eyes are described in terms of the nasal side. In other words, your nose is between your two eyes, so the middle side, the inner side of the retina is called the nasal side. The outer side is called the temporal side because, as in the temple of your head, the temporal part of your head, there is a bone there called the temporal bone as well. But so if you see that in an anatomical diagram, that's what they mean. It's the outer side or the lateral side. All right. So light coming in from the left side will impinge on the nasal side of the left eye, but the temporal side of the right eye. In other words, the two opposite sides of each retina. And the same goes for the light coming in from the right side. Okay, will impinge on the outer side or the temporal side of the left eye and the inner side of the right eye. Now, how are we going to put all of that together so that we know what we really want to know is what's on the right side of your body and what's on the left side of the body? It doesn't really matter as to which part of the retina it got to. Right. Both eyes receive light from both sides of the body. So how are we going to work that out? Well, this is where all of that clever cabling comes in and the information comes in. We see with our brain as much as we do with our eyes. So to go from the eye to the brain, and the information from our eyes is actually processed right at the back of the brain, so it's got a fair way to go. It comes into the eyes, goes out the back of the eyes. Now there's this really clever structure at the base of your brain called the optic chiasm. Now notice how the information that came in from the left side ends up going to the opposite side of the brain. That's something that happens throughout the central nervous system, but it does get gathered together. So the information from the left side and the right side gets rearranged at this optic chiasm so that it can be sent to one side of the brain or the other. So it's now been sorted out so that we know what's on the right side and what's on the left side. So between your eye and your brain, you get well-focused light sent through the retina. It doesn't get bounced around through all of those cells before it gets to the photoreceptors. It gets converted into electrical signals which contain the data that's going to go to our brain. We have a clever cabling system that sorts it all out so that it's arranged according to what's out there in the real world, so that when we get to see something beautiful like this, we go, oh, wow, isn't that wonderful? The Lord God has done a marvelous job with the outside world and with our eyes and brains that we can see it. And I often think of a hymn that we often criticize called All Things Bright and Beautiful, because some of its theology is not quite right. But the last verse is, He, our Creator, gave us eyes to see them and lips that we might tell how great is God Almighty, who has made all things well. So Dawkins is wrong. The Creator is not an idiot. He made all things well. He is great, and we need to go out and tell people that He is great and has made all things well. Now, they didn't stay all well, and we will go into that a little bit more in the program, and also it's one of the general themes of creation research. If we can come back to us, now. We might have some questions, or if anyone else has some further comments before we have some questions.
And I've got a
Go ahead.
Diane.
Yes.
I've just got a thought that came to my mind. You're saying the light coming in from the left side hits different sides of your eyes and then it's processed in your brain. But when you think about it, when you turn your head and look at it from a different angle, it then changes the side of your eyes that it must be hitting, but the object's not moving. So it's a seamless transition from the right to the left side of your eyes.
Yes.
That's incredible when you think about it.
Oh, the amount of processing that goes on in your brain is just staggering. That's why robotic vision and machine vision has been one of the hardest things to develop for engineers who are designing robots that actually negotiate their own way around the real world.
Yeah, just
staggering
on
amount of processing that's going on in your brain all the time.
Just on that, actually, if we're talking about the human eye, I was doing a little bit of digging whilst you were talking. I've come across someone has done some calculations comparing it to like a camera and things like that. So the human eye has been calculated to have around about 576 megapixels of resolution. That's so if we assume there's 24 bits of like data for each pixel, red, green, and blue, and that gives a total amount of 576 million times 24 bits. It's 13,824,000,000 bits per frame. And then assuming the brain can process around 45 images a second, so 45 frames per second, some say 30, some say 60, we're going to take the average. That's 622 billion and 80 million bits per second. If we take those numbers and calculate that in gigabytes, the brain has to process each second. It's around about 77.76 gigabytes per second. So the average home internet in the UK is around about 76 megabits per second. So this is this is about 7 or 8 high definition films your brain is processing in terms of data every single second. It's absolutely astounding the amount of processing power the brain has, and just it's just amazing.
Does that mean Glenn is only processing about 52?
Yeah, I'd probably say that's about right.
John, that has nothing to do with my eyes. That's just
Sorry about that. Sam, why don't you give some thank yous and then we'll throw in some question time.
Well, I was going to add one thing to what Greg said first, and that is you're talking about the amazing ability to process information, and we have 2 eyes, and my wife has 1 eye. She's born blind in the other eye, and yet her brain is able to adjust for a lot of that loss of information. I have a 2020 Hyundai Palisade. Got a smart car to try to aid us with the driving for Ruby to make up for some of her blindness. It has multiple cameras on the front, multiple cameras on the back, and it can drive itself, but you don't want it to because it will oftentimes get confused and try to divert off where a road comes in or where a car decides to turn up ahead of me, and I see what the car is doing and I understand the car is turning, and our car slams on the brakes. Our brain is processing so much better than the best made computers by man, even when they have multiple eyes in front and back. Just our 2 eyes or our 1 eye is so much better.
I thought you were going to say you had 20/20 vision, Glenn, but you had a 20/20 car.
Yeah, I thought that as well. So I'm glad we sort of diverted that potential car accident.
Yes. No. I used to have 20/20. I had better than that. Not anymore.
Yeah.
All right.
I wish I had a 20/20 brain, as John was referring to.
Right, let's launch into some questions and we got to do thank yous first. Doki Doki coming in swinging even before we went live with 2 US Buckaroos, a pair character turning around, waving his hand, saying "Hey you," while lowering his glasses. So I don't have glasses. Someone else will have to do that one. There you go. There you go. There we go. Group participation in the there we go. Perfect. And then we've got George Bond coming in with 20 Aussie buckaroos. The reason why all scientists agree is because they censor the ones that don't. I believe you've got some experience with that, John. And then we've also got Doki Doki again coming in with 3 US buckaroos, a lemon character raising both his thumbs up. There we go. Right, okay, so let's do a question. This is actually a really interesting question coming from Doki Doki. Doki asks, how come we don't have eyeballs for X-ray vision, ultraviolet light, and the seeing distance of eagles?
Diane, you've got to handle that because I suspect my brain would burn out if I had X-ray vision.
There are some creatures that can see ultraviolet light simply because remember those cone cells, some see blue, some see red, some see green. That's to do with they actually have to be tuned to a particular wavelength. So again, even if we go down to the subcellular level, we see incredibly clever design. So just like any sort of energy receiver has to be tuned to a particular wavelength. So ours just aren't. Ours aren't tuned to ultraviolet light. It's probably just as well we can't. The world would be just too glary for us to be able to get around. But there are some insects that can see ultraviolet light. So it's all to do with the molecules in the which act like little antennas inside the rods and cones, or inside the cones, actually, which are the color vision one. X-ray vision is the wavelengths are just too short for any of those molecules. And again, it's probably just as well we'd be too confused if we could see beyond the visible light spectrum that we've got. The seeing distance of eagles is to do with the structure of the retina. If you look at a bird's retina, it does have a slightly different structure, particularly the very, very central part of it. And also they're focusing. Our lenses are designed to focus at a particular distance. So we're not designed to be flying up in the air looking at things down on the ground, so we don't need to be able to focus things that far away. So we are designed to live in the world that we live in, walking around on the ground, and it works well.
Good show.
Great stuff. We've got some more thank yous to come in. People have been sneaky. They're sneaking them in. We've got Neil Grindley coming in with 10 British buckaroos. Greetings to our team and chatsters. Greetings to you, Neil. God bless you. Thank you so much. We've got Iron Matt coming in with his usual 4 US buckaroos, a pair character exaggeratedly stretching his arm forward to offer a cup of coffee. I don't have coffee.
We could always do with a cup of coffee.
Yeah. Can I have one of these? Great stuff. Right. Okay. So let's move on to our next question. This one comes in from Ravi. Question: cancer seems quite well designed. So does the guinea worm, as do many other natural things that try to kill us. Are they all from an intelligent designer?
Yes.
Okay, I'll start this off. Diane, I think you probably should be the one who answers this because we've done a fair few things like this on the Q&A side, haven't we?
Yes.
Yeah, and anybody else who wants to in between. Then after that, Sam, because of time restraints, you need to come back to Craig and myself. Both of us sort of have to leave before the end of the show. But I'll repeat one of the things that I've said we've discovered almost accidentally in Australia about tapeworms. Now, tapeworms are a nightmare to most farmers. If they get in the sheep or whatever, they will rob the sheep of nutrition. They will hook onto the wall, etc. And, you know, when I was at university, they were regarded as an abject pest and evidence against creation. Here's what we've discovered. How do you deal with tapeworms? You can have the very expensive sort of stuff that kills them all, or you can do what some farmers discovered. Children's red cordial is a really good controller and much cheaper than anything else. So there's all sorts of things you can do. But the one thing that's come out of those studies is if you are overloaded with tapeworms. In other words, there's an imbalance got into the system somehow, the sheep will die. On the other hand, if you get rid of them all, then the sheep doesn't do as well. Somehow it seems to have a relationship with the tapeworms to clean the inside of the gut, etc., and pass it on naturally. So if you get rid of them all, the sheep doesn't do as well. If you are overloaded, the sheep dies. In between, if you have the right balance between the worms that can clean out the stomach and the organism, all gets along well. So therefore, in the perfect world where the balance was invented by God, the grass, the eggs, etc., everything works well. When things go downhill, as Ravi says, it looks like it was designed to kill you. No, it was designed to live symbiotically with you, commensally with you, so that there's benefit all the way around, or at least to one with no detriment to the other. Diane, would you take that and run with that there?
Yes, the problem you've got here is a loss of control or a loss of information. So in other words, we're going from a well-designed, well-organized system to something where you have lost some of the information, so it's got out of control. So you have a loss of control between, we'll go with the worms first, with there are a number of worm parasitic diseases that affect human beings as well as sheep. Guinea worm is one of them. If the worms get into the wrong place and are out of control, yes, they will kill you or they will make you sick. So again, it's a loss of information. That's where we see the evidence of design and the evidence that the world started out good because it was full of perfect design. But if you knock out some of that design, you knock out some of the information, things don't work as well. And that's
where's the loss of information, Diane? Where's the loss of information, in the host or in the worm?
Probably in both, in that the host will respond to the worms, and when if there are too many worms or too many other microorganisms, it will kill them off and get rid of them. And also the hosts, for whatever chance random reasons, may end up in the wrong place and think, oh, well, this is a good place to be, but it's not where they were meant to be. So we have to think of chance random processes happening out in the natural world as well. But normally there is communication between the hosts and the commensals. Getting back to cancer, it is a loss of information in the DNA and the genetic information in those cells, in that they have lost the mechanisms that determine how fast they reproduce and how they interact with the other cells around them. So in fact, cancer and worm diseases are a good example of design gone wrong. In other words, we see something where it should work well, but it doesn't. And the reason it doesn't, if we drill down into it, is loss of information. So again, the creation followed by degeneration worldview or mindset explains what's going on. Gradual upwards evolution does not.
In other words, Diane, when people are listening to what we're saying and asking, what would the evidence be for creation? We can answer easily, it's stuff that by itself won't do that, right? So that when you look at the ease, it never happens by itself. But we don't live in that perfect created world. We live in what you said, a created world gone wrong because of our choice to sin. So here's the big picture. You look for brilliant design, fantastic engineering. I don't know if you can remember how many megabytes or gigabytes Sam was talking about. Unbelievable, complex genius at one level, overlaid by a fringe of degeneration due to loss of information or loss of interaction. So that would be the evidence. The biblical picture is correct in Genesis chapter 1, 2, and 3, up to Noah's flood and beyond, down to the present world. Now, Sam, let's just get rid of this off my screen. If you put me back to my whole screen, and we'll bring Craig in a moment. In fact, Craig and I were talking about this before, that Craig is had people come to his seahorse world. And by the way, it's brilliant weather in Tasmania. Go down there, visit him. They need the money in the seahorse world. They need the money in the Creation Museum on the tourist jetty down there at Beauty Point. So go and see them. It's worth seeing. But in reality, when you talk to Craig, he's got millions upon millions of seahorses born every month, really. And a specialist came to visit him. But Craig, what was this specialist interested in, and what did he discover about your seahorses?
How was that?
Craig on screen.
Actually, a she. It was Dr.
Sorry.
Keely Bumstead and another lady called Hai Rin from the Australian National University, which happens to be my university. Came down and wanted to do research on seahorse eyes, and they set up in our lab and did a whole bunch of experiments. And it turns out seahorses have very good vision. But just before I get on to a couple of things they said, the seahorse eyes had always intrigued me because when you look at a seahorse, which has got a sort of obviously long face and narrow head, the eyes, when you look straight on, are independent. So you've got the eyes looking all over independently. And when I considered this, and when you think about it, a lot of fish do it like this, and birds do as well, they're looking in two directions at the same time. And their brain is, which is tiny in a seahorse, their brain is interpreting the information that they're constantly getting from their eyes rotating in different directions, in two different directions at the one time. So I always was intrigued as to how that might happen. So as Diane was sort of pointing out, the brain is critical and essential in the way it interprets the information the eyes are gathering from the light. But these researchers were looking at seahorse eyes, and they obviously did stuff back at the university as well, looking closely in the eyes. But it turns out that seahorses have a fovea. So Diane had that, but didn't talk about it on her diagrams. The fovea is an indentation in the back of the retina, and it's there for giving high visual acuity. So being able to see acutely, if you like, and getting real detail. And the researchers looked at this and determined, well, it's because seahorses eat such a small prey because they've got such a small mouth, and they completely rely on their sight for feeding. They need to be able to see well. And so they've got these foveas, which a number of fish do, but not all fish do. And they use it. They're highly specialised. In fact, the words of the researcher says that seahorses' visual systems are specialised to hunt small prey in a wide range of environments. And it was also interesting to read in the paper that they produced that fish generally have visual pigments within their cone receptors that are spectrally tuned, and again, Diane used this term, that they're tuned to the most abundant wavelengths within their given habitat. So different coloured waters in the tropics, it's bluer than in other areas where it's greener, and also at different depths, the actual pigments within the cone receptors are actually tuned for that fish to the depth that they're at and the coloured water that they live in. So I found that quite intriguing. But it just blows my mind that these things are so designed, so designed.
And in fact, the evidence shows they're so well pre-planned, pre-thought of. You need a brain, you need the eyeballs, but one doesn't work without the other. Nothing works without visual acuity, so you can actually select the wavelengths that are commonly around you, and it works. It's just unbelievable the number of gazillion things that have to work together to make the eyeball work. Now, before I bring up my PowerPoints, I'll bring one of my favorite fossils. Now, I've got thousands and thousands of fossils, and many of them include hundreds and hundreds of trilobites from all over the planet. Yes, I've been collecting rocks since I was just a teenager. So now that I'm 77 this year, you can't believe how many fossils I've actually got, including a vast number of trilobites. Now, I'm glad they invented the name trilobite in 1781 because it was a whole lot better than words like the Dudley bug the English had come up with. Now, I've been to Dudley. I've been to the very quarry where they found these trilobites first, but the best they came up with was Dudley bug. So thank the Lord for the man who gave us the word trilobite. It just means it's got 3 segments. And he didn't know what it was, just like nobody knew what a Dudley bug was. But these rolled up ones, as distinct from these flat ones, have been the most helpful. You see, because they're rolled up, when you cut them open, they actually show their intestines, they show their legs, they show their arthropodic structure. And so we know an awful lot about trilobites, but it's only in the past 20 or 30 years or so where they've managed to get to the eyeball, there's one there, which is multifaceted. And indeed, the lenses are unusual in the fact that they're made of calcite. You know, the stuff you make chalk out of, the stuff that's in calcium carbonate, the stuff that we grow our stalactites out of. Now, I'm going to take over for a little while, bring up my slideshow here. All right, can you see my trilobite?
Yes, we
Diane
can.
and I were not the first to invent this experiment of taking the eyeballs out. We give full credit to the guys who did it first, and we have copied what they've done so that you can see a close-up of the trilobite I was holding. You can see the lenses, the relationships today. There's our roly-poly bugs. When you pick them up, they roll up. Now, trilobites, it seemed, did exactly the same. And there's a batch of, I touched those ones, and immediately I did, they rolled up. There's my rolled up trilobite. You can see the bulgy lens on the side there at the top. Get a bit closer, get a bit closer. And yes, we took all these pictures, really good close-up stuff, I tell you. And you get right up close, and you can see the little round lenses with a little covering there. And you get close up, and look what you can actually extract these. And you can learn a lot by extracting them. So look, there's a close-up side view of a trilobite eye lens. Big fat lens on one side, funny looking lens on the other. It's called a compound eye because most of us don't have 2 lenses in the eye. Glenn might be coming up for replacement lenses, probably not made of calcite, but when you look, the front lens there, the bit you can see at the front of that trilobite eye, and a back lens, which has got a most unusual shape. Now, what it turns out, the front lens is made of oriented calcite. Now, calcite, calcium carbonate, it makes lovely crystals. But this front lens, when we say oriented calcite, the actual lens is designed of a crystalline structure so that it all points back in the direction the light will have to travel coming from the left-hand side to get to the back, what's called an intralensar bowl, which is a totally different shape. Now, if you run some experiments and you actually look at the way the trilobite eye works, and yes, we can carve calcite. We've been using calcite in lenses for microscopes for a long time. It's a brilliant stuff. The light coming in on the left-hand side hits the big, bold lens made of orientated calcite. Then it goes through the intralensar bowl, and if you make a copy of that, well, you have a few problems because we can't actually make the back lens to sit directly on the front lens. But we can pull them out and run these experiments, and in the actual trilobite eye, when it's like that, the light will focus. So that for the trilobite brain, it works the same as yours. It can interpret the light coming in. But when you just take the orientated calcite by itself, yes, we can do this experiment. We can make a lens like that. We've been making them for ages. So we know how calcite behaves. Notice on the right-hand side, the lens does not bring all the light to a focal spot. If the trilobite's eyes were like that, above or below water, it would see nothing but blurry, mixed up information. Now, there's the comparison. The top lens, what we call the interlenser bowl correcting one. It doesn't focus. The bottom one focuses, particularly because there is no air gap between those two different lenses. Now, did you catch that? There is no air gap. We can't do this because we can shape them like that. We can even try and put them together, but every time we do, there'll be either water or glue or air between the two, so it messes up our experiment. Now, when we told you before that a match is made of a piece of wood that won't do matchstick shape, dipped into a piece of burnable stuff, and matchsticks even made won't dip themselves into that. So let's ask what calcite can do if you want to work backwards and figure out where trilobite eyes came from. Left by itself, just in the presence of water and air, carbon dioxide gets into the water, comes down through the cave walls, and it produces stalactites, stalagmites. It produces shoals. It sometimes drips in the ponds and makes beautiful crystals that have wonderful optical properties. That's why we've used them in lenses for all sorts of things. There's a piece of beautiful calcite. Yep, I've got lots of this stuff. I gave some away to my youngest grandchildren for Christmas present. Look what you can do. You can put it on a letter and the letter shows up twice on the other side. Calcite's got some magnificent, interesting properties. But there's one thing calcite can't do. Left by itself over millions of years, even in the presence of water, it will not do that. I mean, we can't even do that without getting air in between those two lenses. And air in a lens really messes up what the light will do. Now, that's what a trilobite eyeball looks like. When we showed you them before, it's got the upper lens unit, the one poking to the outside, that's made of directed crystalline structure that allows the light to go through to the back. It's got that special intralenser bowl. And of course, what's interesting, the mathematicians actually predicted calcite could make lenses like this long before we even understood trilobite eyes themselves. Mathematically, that's possible. But did DNA do this? Well, you can't make matchsticks even dip themselves in a piece of burnable stuff by themselves. DNA is made of a whole lot of stuff, carbon, phosphorus, nitrogen, hydrogen, etc., none of which do DNA. Now, have you got that yet? A creation is when a substance is made out of something that can't do the stuff itself. So the components of DNA do not do information. Hydrogen, sulfur, carbon does not have the information for making sophisticated, unbelievably sophisticated codes. Get that into your head. It's so vital when you're dealing with this subject. So here's our challenge to evolutionists like Dawkins, Attenborough, the professor at the university, the people who foolishly believe what's in their textbooks. How many successful eyes have they designed? Or we're trying our robot eyes, our cameras on cars. You see, the camera on car only works well if it's got a pre-programmed brain based on experience. Likewise, the robots, they have to copy at best. How many successful eyes have they designed? Well, compared to giraffes' eyeballs, compared to eyeballs that are in ourselves, they haven't. In fact, there's the challenge. When evolutionists design a better eyeball, then we'll be impressed by their arguments, except there's one flaw in it. Their eyeball was a created eyeball, not the one they've got in their head, but the one they existed before, the one they're not a part of, the one they put meaningless stuff, metal, silica, carbon, whatever you're going to put into it, and it works only because a creator was involved. Now, again, I want to stress to you, if your eyes are failing and you need glasses, or like Glenn, you need a new lens, don't blame God. You see, the evidence for creation is a perfect creation with brilliant design, overlaid at the edges by the evidence of sinful habitats causing degeneration. So, Ravi, no, not an example of a teacher who takes credit for the grade A class and fails the people who don't, but a teacher who actually takes credit for it all, and then he dies for all his students on a cross, because the one problem they can't solve is the problem called sin. Simple point. There are plenty of opinions and theories that disagree with the Bible teaching of God as the pre-existent intelligent designer, but the facts never do. Eyeball to eyeball, you're looking at 100% conviction of evidence. That's why God says the invisible things of God from the creation of the world are clearly seen. You've got eyes, you've got a brain, and you understand this. So whether your name is Ravi or Dawkins or Attenborough or whatever, you understand this. Please don't pretend you've got an excuse. Please don't say the worms in Africa prove this wrong, because we've got abundant evidence, even on our website, how stupid that actually is. So people, all of us, me included, are without excuse for giving God the credit and the praise. Now, I guess it's time to have our last question time, but don't be surprised if Craig and I disappear, because I've got to go and tend to my wife, who, despite the improvement, is still suffering from dementia. But we've seen some wonderful progress there. I need glasses? No, praise the Lord, I rarely do. So, Sam, if you want to take my, there we are, that's good. Craig, you feel free to leave when you need. I'll do the same. And that leaves Sam and Diane and Glenn. Good.
We're good.
We'll hold the fort. It's fine.
I have some other things to share as well with regards to some of the questions Robbie's made. Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Well, I mean, let's jump right into some of these the questions that have been coming in. So this is a question from Doki Doki. This is relevant to the trilobites. Before you go, why does a trilobite or mantis shrimp need one of the best eyes in all of creation?
Well, I'm not sure that's an accurate statement. They need an eye which is sufficient for their purpose, right? So if you took the trilobite eye and you put it above the water, it really wouldn't be too much use at all unless you put it in a microscope and you had a specific function for it. So best is a relative term here. Best for deep sea, as Craig was talking about. Best for changing colours of water, as he was also the guys who were commenting on his seahorses. Best is suited to purpose. So best has no meaning except what the purpose of this is. Now, in the case of the mantis shrimp, Craig may know more about these than I do, but in reality, that's the comment I would make overall. Our eyes work well, not particularly underwater. I can see underwater, but not all that far. I've got to put an air gap between me and the glass as I scuba dive or whatever. But the fishes and the seahorses see far better from me, but they don't do well. If I pull them out of water, they're dead in a few moments. So, Craig, you got any more comments to add to that one? And then Glenn?
Well, just one of the words that's really jumped out during this session to me is the tuning, which Diane first mentioned and which I also had been reading about. The tuning. I mean, tuning doesn't happen by chance. Tuning happens by design. And for all these creatures to be tuned to the environment they're in, just the right design in the eyes to accept the light in the environment they're in and the way it needs to be then interpreted in the brain is too much for me to really comprehend that it could happen by chance.
Mm-hmm.
Glenn,
yes, nothing in biology works in isolation.
Yeah. In fact, Diane, could you make a comment at this point here? I think it's on our website, but you made some really good points about the people in the Bible who were healed from blindness, right? And our experiment. Go ahead.
Yes, indeed. That's one of the things that is very prominent in the Gospels. And that's one of the things that alerted people, can Jesus be the Messiah? Because he brings sight to the blind. And that was one of the things that was prophesied in the Old Testament about what the Messiah would do. He literally did it. And he also brought understanding, as in we talk seeing the light. But going back to Jesus healing people, yes, one of the most well-documented healing miracles is in the Gospel of John, where he heals a man who was born blind. And one of the comments that was made in the discussion between that man, who was obviously a very intelligent man, and the Pharisees who were trying to discredit Jesus, he said, the previously blind man said, Jesus must be something special because he has done this. No one's ever heard of someone who was born blind being able to see. Now, that means Jesus not only healed that man's eyes, we don't know what was wrong with his eyes, but he also had to give him a whole lot of information in his brain so that he could recognize the world around him. And we know that he was able to do that because he went home, so he knew where to go and recognized his home and his parents. And so you see with your brain as much as you do with your eyes, in fact, more than that. So Jesus not only had to heal his eyes, he also had to heal his brain. He had to put all those terabytes of information into that man's brain. So he healed the entire system.
All right, Glenn, did you want to add anything to what we've been saying so far?
Not on this. I was going to address some of the comments that Ravi made, not just about the, that we give God the credit for the good, but not for the bad. Then we blame it on the student. And you addressed that no, God is a creator. He created things beautifully, wonderfully. He said that it was very good. But then sin entered into the world. And I would just tell Ravi to read in Romans chapter 8, it says, for the creation was subject to futility. It's because of our sin that things are degrading. There's mutations. There's cancer cells that go bad. But God designed it beautifully. But all creation, it says, groans. All creation, it says, is looking for Christ's return when it's going to be freed from the slavery of corruption. But there is corruption in the world. My concern with Ravi is this. Jesus said in Matthew 13, he says, you keep on hearing, but will not understand. You keep on seeing, but will not perceive. For the heart of this people has become dull. With their ears, they scarcely hear, and they've closed their eyes. Otherwise, they would see with their ears, see with their eyes, hear with their ears, and understand with their heart and return, and I would heal them. I beg of Ravi to take what we've said and understand that God loves us. He created us to be very good, but sin entered into the world. And because of that corruption, my eyes are deteriorating. That's not God's fault. That's my fault. That's our fault as mankind. But Jesus turned to his disciples. He says, but blessed are your eyes because they see, and your ears because they hear. And I just would plead with him to have eyes to see and ears to hear. You've heard the truth over and over on this broadcast, but you've got to choose to give your life to Jesus Christ. And one day we're going to get that new body, and I can't wait to have the new eyes. I can't imagine what we're going to be able to see that maybe even when I thought I had good eyes, I was not seeing. That's going to be the new heaven and new earth. And would love to have Ravi there with us. Oh,
indeed.
Yeah.
Yes, I've never had completely normal vision, so I'm looking forward to finding out what that's like.
I'm looking forward to having a kidney that actually works properly as opposed to having the other one compensate for it.
All right, guys, I'm going to bid you farewell and
No
go
worries,
look after
John.
my darling wife. So wonderful time today. Sam, back to you. A couple of thank yous, I think. And so parting ways. God bless. See you next week.
God bless, John. See you. See you, Craig. God bless. Thanks for joining. And actually, just on that point, you were raising, Glenn, with that last bit. I just wanted to sort of add on a little something. You literally you pick up a Bible, right? You turn to Genesis, and it starts off, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and it literally lists through day one, day two, doing all these amazing things, creating galaxies and nebulas and cells and, giraffes and otters and, grass, whatever, everything in creation. And it's perfect. It's wonderful. And you literally turn the page and we mess it up.
yes.
A page has turned and it
take long.
all comes tumbling down because God created the world and Eden and created us to have that relationship with him, have that intimate connection with him. And because He gave us free will. He needed to give us that
Yes.
choice in the Garden of Eden to either accept or reject God, because otherwise it wouldn't be true free will. He wouldn't.
Yes.
We would all be going around as robots saying yes, thank you, God, blah blah blah, and there would be no freedom in that choice. So he had to, by his nature, give us that choice, and we chose to rebel. And that is why we have sin in the world, is because we chose to rebel. We chose ourselves to corrupt the world we were in, and to let all this bad stuff, all, to go from good to bad to worse. And so it's that downhill trajectory that we keep coming back to, that phrase, good to bad to worse. And because of that is because we have, flybots that eat the eyes of children in Africa, or we have cancer in children, or we have people who are born with cerebral palsy or Down syndrome, or a mental illness like anxiety, depression,
it's
ADHD.
not God's fault. It's not God's fault. He created it perfect.
He created it perfect, and we messed it up. And we
and
are
the amazing thing about that is what the Bible says is, but while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us.
Exactly. And that's the most amazing thing, is that even though God made the world so perfect, he already knew we were going to mess it up. And so you take the entire Bible is the story of God's redemption of his original plan, to have that connection back with us. And that is why Jesus died on the cross, to restore that broken connection. Everything in the Old Testament of sacrificing lambs, of all the priests in the temple, things like that, they are just putting a finger in the hole of a boat that's flooding. The proper solution is to take it onto shore, weld it solid, seal it up, and they can go back on the water again. That is what Jesus did. Jesus was the permanent bridge between us and God. And that is why he died on the cross. And he died on the cross for you. Every single person who is listening to this or watching this died for you, for your sins, every single thing you've ever done. As an intercessor, he is your lawyer before God, and he will represent you and say, look, I'm taking the rap for this one. That's on me. This person has accepted what I've done, and it's a free gift. But again, it is our choice. It's a choice that we have to make.
And Romans chapter 8 says all creation is longing for Christ's return, when there's going to be a new heaven and a new earth, where there is no sin, there is no disease, there is no mutations, and there's no degradation going bad to worse with eyes or anything else. But you have to choose Christ to be able to be there in that new heaven and new earth.
Exactly. Amen indeed. And
good job.
Also, I felt the spirit move, and I had to go with it. We've got another question here coming in from Ravi. Does God have dominion over all things, or just the good things? Now, this is I've got two scriptures for you, Ravi. I'm just flipping to them now. So the first one is in Isaiah 45, verses 6 to 9. That they may know from the rising of the sun to its setting, that there is none beside me. I am the Lord, and there is no other. I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create calamity. I, the Lord, do all these things. Rain down, you heavens, from above, and let the skies pour down righteousness. Let the earth open. Let them bring forth salvation, and let righteousness spring up together. I, the Lord, have created it. And that's basically talking about God essentially having dominion over the earth. And there's another section here as well. This is in Colossians. Colossians verses, I think it's 9 onwards. I'll just read 9 onwards. For this reason, we also, since the day we heard it, do not cease to pray for you and to ask that you may be filled with the knowledge of his will in all wisdom and spiritual understanding, that you may walk worthy of the Lord, fully pleasing him, being fruitful in every good work and increasing in the knowledge of God, strengthened with all the might according to his glorious power, for all patience and long suffering with joy. Give thanks to the Father who has qualified us to be partakers of the inheritance of the saints in the light. He has delivered us from the power of darkness and conveyed us into the kingdom of the Son of his love, in whom we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sins. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. This is the key bit here. For by him all things were created that are in heaven and that are on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things consistent. There we go. So that's a little bit of a Bible answer for you, Ravi. But yes, it dominion over all, and obviously that led into your question about cancer, which is, yes, I mean, you know, God essentially has a dominion. Do we know why God allows some children to die of cancer? No, we don't. You know, that is not. It's not up to us to know these certain things. Only God has a plan, and it may be that this is, you know, that a death in the family will be how someone can grow closer to God and ultimately have a connection with God. Do I believe those children will go to heaven? I personally do. That's just me. You know, but I can't speak for the rest of you guys, but I personally believe that there'll be an age where you can actually comprehend what Christ did on the cross, and that's the point where you are ultimately judged whether or not.
Yeah. Again, if you can trust Christ as your savior, you can trust him on that issue as well.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, there's one thing I'm do know is that there is a God and I'm not him. So I'll let him.
Amen to that. We'll do a quick super thanks to Doki Doki coming in again with 99 US Centaurus, 100 underlined twice. Thank you very much, Doki. God bless you. But yeah, so we have come to the end of all of our questions for this evening, but we're not done yet because I have two videos to show you. So the first video we're going to show you is the video from the trip to the museum that I did last year. And please don't go anywhere. You don't want to miss what comes up afterwards, because we've got an announcement to make and I want to make sure you're all here for it. So without further ado, we'll roll this video.
Welcome aboard this West Midlands Railway service to Wolverhampton.
Right, guys. So on the train. Hopefully you can hear me. This is sort of the first time I'm testing this. We're on our way to Wolverhampton. We've got to get a train from there to Gabowen, because that's the only train station that's close to Oswestry, where the museum is. But yeah, so that's the plan. We're going to go over there, going to do some filming, do some bits and pieces of admin. We've got some really exciting stuff planned. Can't tell you anything about it, but we'll take you along for the ride. We'll give you a little bit of a behind the scenes look. Got some really cool stuff planned. I've got all my kit here. That's my lighting rig. Obviously you've got the microphones here, and also I've got my my bag of goodies. Well, that's my tripod. But yeah, so the whole plan is basically to go along and film some stuff, do some bits of admin, you know, give you a little bit of an update about how the museum's doing, and yeah, we'll see you then.
third runway and Liverpool line 2.
I'm gonna miss my train. I'm gonna miss my train. Oh no. Okay. Come on, son. Where are those legs? I like tech. I don't like running. Please let me get my train. Please let me get my train. Please. Platform 2. Platform 2. Platform 2. Okay. Platform 2.
Railway service to Shrewsbury via Telford Central is delayed.
Wait, what?
This train will depart in approximately 5 minutes.
Oh, you're kidding. You know, it just, oh, thank you, Lord. Oh, panic over. Right, okay, so, plan is, get on this train. It's a little bit more calm to get over there, so we'll see what happens. Oh, it's cold. Mind you, it is the middle of December, so swings and roundabouts. Right. Yeah. Shrewsbury. There we go. Oh no, that's my one there. Shrewsbury. Platform 2. There we go. Lovely jubbly. And that's how you do it. That's how you get from one platform in a mild panic to another one. And I need to catch my breath. So, see you in a second.
This is Shrewsbury, our final station.
Right, okay, we have arrived in Gabowen. I'm just heading on my way to go see Joe and Sarah Ann. You'd think with a name like Gabowen, it sounds like a Welsh sort of city, town thing. It's not. It's actually on the border of Wales. It's actually situated in Shropshire. And I thought I'd take this moment to sort of have a little brief chinwag about a little bit of my heritage. So my parents were born and grew up in Shropshire, Ludlow and Shrewsbury. That's where they primarily resided. And then, well, actually, did these? Ooh, Gabowen sandwich bar. Ooh, I'm very hungry. I haven't had any breakfast yet. Right, apologies for that interruption. I got myself a nice bit of breakfast, bacon and egg bap. Lovely jubbly, just what I need to start the day. What was I saying? Oh yes, so my history, so obviously my dad, his dad, my grandfather, was a vicar in the Church of England. And obviously his name, the last name from that side of the family is Jenkins, Jenkyns. And so it's very interesting if you look at sort of like the history, that I've got Welsh roots. That's where my family basically sort of originates from. And it's very interesting just sort of when you trace back your roots and you go back to, you know, that sort of area, and it's very nice to sit here and you know, think, oh, I'm not going that way, I'm going to get dripped on. You know, look back at your roots and you trace back your heritage. My dad's fascinated by it. But yeah, so I feel whenever I come back here, that's sort of this neck of the woods. I know I'm not too far away, but this neck of the woods, I'm always very happy to sort of feel like I've got a little bit of a connection back to where my roots are. But anyway, right, okie doke. I'm going to head inside, say hi to Joe and Sarah Ann, and we're going to head over to the museum. Yeah.
After the parade, and they apparently did some clearing up.
Okay, so here we are in the Creation Museum, and it's looking pretty swanky. It's a little dark, but I'll come on to that in a second. But have a look at how well the team have done all of the colouring on here. Absolutely fantastic. Really, really great stuff. It's really coming along so well. I love these lights here. It gives that nice little sort of shadow on the fossils there. Absolutely fantastic. But this is something I want to come on to, because you'll see over here, if I tilt my camera around, it's looking all very dark, but there's a lot of lights and things. Goodness me. I've got a camera slider down there. Goodness me, what on earth is going on in here? Well, let me see if I can grab a certain Mr. Hubbard for a quick chin wag, and hopefully we can update you as to what we've got going on in the museum. Right, I managed to track him down. Here he is. Here's Trouble. How you doing, Joe?
Yeah, doing all right.
Good.
Surviving.
Yeah.
Getting ready for Christmas.
Yes. All that holly jolly shenanigans.
Yes.
So I've just shown everyone just a little brief glimpse as to what we've got going on over here. It's very dark. There's a lot of lights sort of on poles. We've got a weird thing on the floor. Can I give us a little sort of sneak preview as to what we've got going on? Have we got any other future projects we've got working on?
Well, we've got a few things that you've been working on in particular, Sam. One of them, of course, is the whole app thing, where we're going to be having all of the creation research content on a subscription-based apps, and all the free stuff will be on there as well. And so it's about time that we move back into producing the more premium documentaries, rather than just producing all the stuff for our YouTube channel, like Creation Conversations and Around the Museum and so on and so forth. So this is really your project, but involved, or is in, the rest of Creation Research team is involved as well. Glenn, Diane, John, Craig, myself. In looking at that question of theistic evolution, Corrupting Genesis is the name of the documentary, and we're just doing some test runs really to see how the setup can look and how we want it all to go, and do a bit of test filming today.
Perfect, lovely jubbly. Well, I mean, there you have it, guys. It's just a brief sort of look behind the scenes today as to what we've got going on in the museum. It's looking absolutely fantastic, isn't it? The guys have done a really good job, haven't they, with all the painting and the... So thank you very much for watching my little brief update. And yeah, I've got to get cracking. I've got to get these lights and cameras set up. Watch this space. We'll be announcing something very, very soon. A bit more of a formal announcement anyway. All right then. See you guys. Thank you so much. Right, there we go. So that was a nice little sort of sneak peek behind the scenes, sort of some of the work we do behind the scenes. It's a lot of work, but it's work we enjoy to do, because it brings you all the really good stuff that you need to know to defend your faith, and that sort of brings me on nicely to our next sort of thing that we're doing, the big announcement. So as the more regular viewers will know, that we have the Genesis project that was sort of spearheaded by me, and has been a sort of passion project of mine. That is still coming. Don't worry, we haven't forgotten about it. We want to do something first, as sort of like a prequel. So there's been a lot of you probably have noticed this as Glenn and Diane as well in your sort of travels, especially among the years, that there seems to be a growing movement of theistic evolution. of increasing sort of numbers of people, trying to shove millions of years into the Bible, trying to, the gap theory and, things like that. And, God of the gaps, all that sort of malarkey. And that's sort of got our brains turning as we're sort of working on the Genesis project, because that's expanded far beyond I could possibly even imagine. That's now a proper full-length documentary. But we've got another documentary coming up before that, which is going to come out before. And it's, again, it is a passion project of mine, but it's also something that I think is very much needed, because we don't have a documentary about it, I don't believe, in our repertoire, dealing with specifically theistic evolution on that specific topic. And I think it's something that's greatly needed. And one of the things we want to do with it is to give people a resource that we can point people to and say, okay, you've got someone who's asked about X, Y, Z dealing with theistic evolution, go watch this documentary. That'll answer your question. And the whole point is we're going to give you sort of 5-10 minute answers to sort of the top 10, top 20 questions, frequently asked questions about theistic evolution, dealing with things like Lucy and the God of the gaps, that sort of thing, and dealing with them in depth, as in depth as we can in that sort of time frame. And obviously, we still have a lot of things to shoot, but that's one of the reasons why I went over to the museum, is to shoot test footage. We're going to be doing something very interesting with it as well, with the test footage. We want to involve you as the community. So we're still working out details at the minute, but what we want to do is we want to get your feedback on it. We want to make sure that we're producing the best possible product that we can, to give you the best possible tools to defend your faith with. And so one of the reasons is we're going to be releasing the test footage. It'll either be via a newsletter or via the new streaming service or something like that. We're working out the kinks, which is also a really great plug. Leads me really nicely into this. Please, if you haven't already, please do sign up to our newsletters. They're free, got lots of really great stuff, keeps you up to date with all the great things the Creation Research are doing. You can go to linkedin.bio/Creation Research, or you can scan it with your fancy smartphone using your camera. If you don't have a smartphone camera, that's fine. Just type in that URL, you'll get access to it, and it's got all of our links to everything on there, and it's all hunky dory. But just before we sort of launch into the trailer, Diane and Glenn, what's been your sort of experience with sort of theistic evolution? Like, what sort of, do you feel like it's accelerating currently at the minute in terms of acceptance in the Christian community?
Oh, yes, I'm completely surrounded by it. And the sad thing is, it is being actively taught to the next generation of young people who want to go out and serve the Lord. And they will be confronted with these questions and being told that, oh, you don't need to know about this. It's not a gospel issue, or being told, oh, well, that's just how God did it. That does not answer the questions that the world will be throwing at them. So, yes, it's a big concern of mine.
Yes. And I think here in America, it's very prevalent among pastors, because pastors aren't trained into creation. They don't know what to say, so they accept that, well, evolution must be true, and it kind of gives them an out that, oh, I can believe the Bible, I can also believe evolution, and never really thought about how the two are incompatible and are mutually exclusive. So it's a real need to address this.
And also the consequences as well of doing so, because the Genesis is the foundation, the root of everything in Scripture. Even Jesus on the cross, the reason why he died on the cross is to deal with sin. How did sin enter the world? Especially if you have theistic evolution, you have this issue of, when did sin come in?
Sin?
Exactly. When did sin enter because we know from Genesis, we've got thorns and thistles that spring up. We've even got a whole dedicated episode of Around the Museum with Diane and Joe, dedicated to this issue of thorns and thistles. Really great watch, available free on our YouTube channel. It's really, really, it's so crucial, and so you don't realize how deep it goes until you start going down the rabbit hole. It's very easy to sort of have that sort of, I'm just going to sail along in the boat, and that because that's what everyone's doing, and just sort of la-di-da, but then you don't realize the true root of the issue. and how deep it does go. And so that's why we're making this documentary. So without further ado, I'm going to play this this short sort of teaser trailer just to sort of whet your appetite a little bit. And we're going to we'll sort out all the details later on about the releasing of the test footage for you all. One of the things that we'll obviously please ask you to do is to give feedback if you do watch it. You can send us an email. We'll probably have a form as well underneath the video or something like that you can fill out just to give us some feedback, what you liked, what you didn't like, what you want to see, what you don't want to see, that sort of thing. So this should give you a sort of a good look at things. So we'll play that now. And there we have it. Look at that. Lovely. But yeah, so that's obviously the announcement for our new documentary. It is coming. It's coming a lot sooner than the Genesis project. The aim, hopefully, is to get it out this year, Lord willing. And obviously, Diane, you're coming over to the UK later on this year. So we're going to film some stuff with you. Got some really great things planned for that. Really good ideas and stuff like that. But it's a tool. It's all tools for you guys, and that's also one of the reasons why we want to get you onto the new streaming service when it's going to launch. It's going to launch in the next sort of month, I think, according to the conversations I'm having behind the scenes anyway. But we'll keep you updated on everything to do with that. But again, please do keep subscribed to the newsletter. That is the number one way to get up to date with anything urgent or prayer requests or anything like that that's coming up. Please do sign up. It's completely free. We don't spam you. We promise. We don't spam you, do we, Diane? We don't spam you with a bunch of stuff. It's all good. But anyway, thank you so much, everyone, for watching. It's a little bit of a longer creation conversation this way. I thought it would go on longer, but it's all good. It's fine. You guys have got a great announcement. And also, this is nice from Neil. I'll just pop this on the screen here. Just as an encouragement to the CR team, at work I've been able to use what I've learned from the team to open conversations with my colleagues and to talk about the law, especially as the subjects are so relevant to today. Oh, bless you, Neil. Thank you so much. This is why we do it. This is why we do it. Indeed. This is the reason why. So thank you, Neil. It really does mean a lot, and that's why we do it for you guys. So thank you very much, everyone, for watching. We're back next week. We need to put up a whole bunch of the latest shows to come up. That'll be coming up in the next couple of days. So stay tuned to the YouTube channel. Subscribe if you haven't already. It's completely free. It does really help us out. And ring that notification bell because you don't want to miss when we go live and answer all your burning questions. And also like and share the video if you can. That'd be really helpful. But yeah, thank you for joining me, Diane, for this wild ride of a creation conversation. This has been really great fun. Thank you very much for your presentation. Really, really in-depth and really insightful, as always. But yes, thank you very much, everyone. God bless, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Indeed. Goodbye.